How can a product manager measure whether they are learning and thriving in their current role? Like how can they see, yeah, I'm really learning, I'm moving forward in my career. How can they measure that?
See, the thriving is majorly resonates with how much are you growing in your role altogether. The key area that you would want to learn is that how much impact are you trying to bring in the product that you're working on? How much are you growing personally? How much are you able to influence all of that, right?
Hello everyone, Manoj here, product manager and content creator. Many of you had asked about product management and how does a product managers are hired. So today I had invited Ashutosh, who is a product leader with 10 plus years experience, who has worked in different industries like HR tech, marketplace, and also health tech. He has also worked with Dr. Reddy's. He has worked with marketplace like Droom, and currently he is head of product at Zenadmin. So thanks a lot, Ashutosh, for joining here. So I've curated a list of questions that the community has, the aspiring product managers has, or the who are early and senior PM have. So I'll ask them one by one. Before that, if you can give a quick introduction to the audience, it would be great.
Hi, hi. Thank you. Thanks, Manoj. Thanks for calling me on the podcast and happy to uh, go through this and then share my journey altogether. So I'll just take a brief to explain my journey. It's been 11 years in the industry into product. I generally call myself an accidental product manager. My journey started in 2013 when the e-commerce was and then the PM role was not really fascinating. And I was kind of a more inclination towards being a digital marketer. I wanted to be that, but then the role that was offered to me in first company after the MBA placements was PM. So I think the manager who was working with me, who helped me out to craft my role at that point of time, I think since then I've not really seen back and have worked with companies like India Property, Droom, ET Money, Leena AI, and currently managing the team and driving product as Zenadmin. So I think this has been my journey overall since last 11 years or so.
Perfect. I think as you told, the product manager as a role has been becoming trending and more popular in recent days. I think 10 years back, it was not like a role that everyone wanted to get in. Yeah, perfect. So I'm going to focus this podcast more on PMs who want to thrive in their career and understand your view on hiring PMs also. So the first question is, at least for other roles, like it's very easy to measure that we are growing in our career or not, right? But how can a product manager measure whether they are learning and thriving in their current role? Like how can they see, yeah, I'm really learning, I'm moving forward in my career. How can they measure that?
See, the thriving is majorly resonates with how much are you growing in your role. The key area that you would want to learn is that how much impact are you trying to bring in the product that you're working on? How much are you growing personally? How much are you able to influence all of that, right? And which is where you would basically define how do you measure your success in the role. So key areas is one, let's start with first is impact on the product and users that you're working on. So let's say if I talk from the B2C perspective and you're working on e-commerce, then a product that you're dealing with, how much day to day you are able to measure the success of the features that you're rolling out or the product impact that you're making, right? Or if you're on a B2C side, again, the users, how much you're able to solve their complex problem on a day-to-day life. So that is first thing that the user should understand or person should understand from his perspective and growth. Another thing that comes in is very important, and generally that people call it a line you've seen CEO of the product. I know it's being more the term that everyone uses, but the stakeholder management is so much important being a product manager role, be it B2C. On the B2B side, it increases even often more because you have to make sure you talk to your different customers, you talk to your different stakeholders internally to build that rapport. That is very much important for anyone to thrive and being successful in their role. And if you've been able to do that, you will be able to move toward the path wherein you will be able to grow yourself, learn more and more things, right? Now, having said that, learning and growth becomes the third major aspect of the role. Now, how do I say this? Basically, you start from an executioner in a role. Let's say 10 years back when I started, I was more of an executioner who was trying to execute what my managers was telling, what my managers was trying to help me. I was learning in that role. Today, the role has become much more strategic in terms of what I have to make sure, what I have to align with the vision of the company, what I have to. Third is how much you're able to measure yourself or navigate in the path of ambiguity, right? So in some of the cases, if you one of the term that is being called in the industry, the customer doesn't even know what he himself want, and you should be able to identify the unknown part of it, right? So you should be able to define that, and it's not every time that a data would help. It's not every time that the customer will be able to tell you the problem. Sometimes you have to understand, go deeper and deeper, and then infer out of the problems and feedbacks, which is where you will be able to define yourself what is coming out of that. Right? I think I've already covered another aspect of it is feedbacks, right? So basically, you keep getting those feedbacks about yourself up from the customers for your product and you keep navigating. So I think that's important. Finally, the self-reflection basis the feedback, you are able to self. So I've covered the part in terms of what is there for the product manager, what is there from the personal growth, and how you navigate through and thrive into the tough part of being a product manager in the industry.
Perfect. I think just to summarize, the key things is one is how are you impacting your product, business, and users, and second is how are you able to navigate ambiguity, and how are you able to get feedback and let's say solve user problems which even users don't know, right? Like I got to know like Zomato recently launched that thing, right? When an order is cancelled, you can buy it at a lower price. That's a problem that a user might not have. Maybe
Correct.
after this launch, that's a need. So when I'm getting something at a lesser cost, there are higher chances that people would buy. Yeah, perfect. So the next question is, I think at least for other roles, I've been people being stable in terms of hiring, right? So for example, if it's a senior software engineer, they say कि यार it should have 3 to 5 year experience, right? But at least for PM role, I've seen at different orgs, maybe some become like a senior PM in 3 years, some become senior PM in like 7, 8 years, and some become head of product in let's say 5 years itself. And you would have also seen those kind of scenarios. So how does this work, right? And is there like a specific criteria? Okay, so this role needs minimum years of experience, or there's nothing like that, or it depends on the context of the org or the role.
See, I think we were talking about ambiguity, right? This is one of the
Yeah,
key ambiguity in the product management department, or I think it is evolving like that. Now, the answer to this basically lies completely on the type of product that you're working, kind of company that you're working, what is the scale at which you're working, and industry and country that you're working in, right? So the answer would completely be dependent on that. It is more going to be subjective. I know there are veterans who have already defined it, but then you would go into five different, if even if we put out the JD of five different companies, you must have seen people floating the APM role with the 5 years of experience. Now that's where the generally memes and discussion starts happening, right? But even if you want to map the general experience, APM could be someone who is starting from 0 to 2 and then so on. So PM could be 2 to 4 years, SPM could be 4 to 7 years. A GPM and a PPM, basically a group product manager or a principal product manager, would vary from 7 to 10 years, and then director and VP beyond 10 years. Now, if you talk about the last two, there's a bit of ambiguity, much more ambiguity there as well. You must have seen people going to senior director or associate director level even at a 7 to 10 years of range. So that's where it evolves. But it is completely about not about the experience, it is also about the person's level of understanding, deepness into the role altogether, and how much he has demonstrated leaderships or his own impact into the user's life or in his journey to be being a product manager. Now, one of the key things that have happened in the market is that many of the people or the have started being a co-founder. They being a co-founder for 2 years or so in early of their career, they jump into a director role very immediately after 2 years, 3 years, or so on, right? So, but could be that they understand depthness of the market or depthness of the role as such, so they've been able to deliver. So, it is more about the your skills into that role versus plus these number of years that can help you to go into different roles and navigate you to up the ladder into the role.
got it, got it. I think, as you told, it's very subjective based on, let's say, your understanding, your experience, and also what companies expect. Perfect. So the next thing is, in your 10 plus years of career, you would have hired a lot of people in product management in different companies, right? So I just want to understand what are the top three key things you look for hiring for the following roles. Maybe top three things you look while hiring a APM, a PM, and a SPM. We can cover that. So the context is, there are three kind of audience, right? So one, there's the audience who want to switch to a new company, right? So it would be helpful for them. Second is freshers who want to get into APM, and third is there are people who are in a different role, maybe who are a program manager or project manager somewhere in the management role, and they want to transition to a product manager role. So if you can highlight this, that would be helpful.
Let me divide it into two parts. One is someone transitioning into the role, that is first. and also someone who is starting the career into that. And then let's talk about people who have already moved into this role, and then how do they see their skills going beyond and evolving these skills, right? So first thing is one answer that everyone should know in the fanciness of this role that has gone beyond just everyone wants to be product manager these days is that the definition of product management in terms of understanding is very important for them, right? So basically, they should know what is their objective of becoming a product manager. Now, every today you've seen we have seen a sales guy wants to be a product manager, a marketing guy wants to be a product manager, a engineer wants to be a product manager. Need to understand the aspects of the product management apart from the salaries and also the kind of exposure it gives, whether this particular domain suits you or not, right? Why do you want to transition into this product management role? That is pretty much important for everyone to understand. So if a person who is planning to transition to these roles should be able to define and answer these questions on his own to make sure that he knows what he's trying to do, why he wants to transition from a particular role to a product manager, right? So I've seen people transitioning from a QA to a product manager or from a CSM to a product manager, and they've evolved. But at the same time, there are people who tried but they did not succeed and they're still struggling. So I think that could be the journey altogether. Today, if you talk about myself, if I talk about myself, I've been a non-tech PM, and there are requirements in the market. People specifically ask for SQL as a requirement or technical know-how, right? So that's how you would want to understand. And being a product manager, you might, while you might not be technical, but you have to gain that interest or understanding technical know-how. You should be able to navigate through the technical team, right? So that is pretty much important. So that is the transition part. Now, key things, if I were to summarize for someone who would want to transition from a different role to this, is basically how much analytical he is in terms of defining, understanding the problem, how closely he can work with different stakeholders and customers to understand their problem, navigate the issues, understand, go more deeper into that, and how much of ownership can he take in terms of being a product manager, right? He has to be executioner, he has to be data driven, he has to be ownership driven, and most importantly, communication is the key part of this role. Now, B2C and B2B both the part. B2B, it becomes much more evident for you to be more effective in your communications versus B2C because you can still operate with the marketing team, go to the customers and all. But B2B, it becomes more important. So these are the key things if you talk about transitioning someone from a sales role or any other roles to product management role. Now, if you talk about associate product manager to SPM, which is senior product manager, the role starts from execution to a strategic role altogether. So in the early of your career, it is more something that I would look. Let me put it that perspective. If I were to look at someone as a APM, how much curious he is to understand the product and about this domain, how much in deep he can go and go in a critical direction to think about a problem. That's something that I will look. Analytical thinking, obviously, if he can bring facts and figures to understand the problem altogether, and how strong is this communication. Now, I'm not saying communication with respect to English only. In communication, he is able to navigate through multiple stakeholders. He is able to communicate the problems correctly. He is able to speak to customers. So these are the major important points for an associate product manager. If I were to put from the product manager perspective, how much the execution skills become much more important there because now he has moved a second level to this, right? And then cross-functional collaboration is more important there. Plus, user centricity is important, right? So, in these three areas, he should be the someone who should be able to navigate through as a product manager. Now, coming to the senior product manager, obviously you're honing those skill to one level to second level to third level, but I'm just focusing on the three main aspects that I would look into apart from those in up the ladder, right? In the senior product management, obviously, the strategic thinking becomes much more important. How he's able to define the problems, how he's able to basically think more strategically with respect to aligning with the vision or a vision of the product. Uh, how does he own the leadership skills to manage a small team, right? And is he able to take the decisions as well, right? So, which is where it becomes much more important. Is he able to take certain decisions? And also at the senior product manager, sometimes depending on the role, the mentorship also becomes important because it could happen that a role may transition from a PM to SPM to a people manager role as well, right? So, which is where it becomes more important to understand whether you're able to manage a team, whether you're able to mentor your team. So, this is how I see from an APM to PM to SPM, and this is how I see some of the generic things, which is like data-driven things, communications, and stakeholder management, which would part of your journey altogether from an associate PM to top level.
Got it. Perfect. I think thanks a lot for summarizing like who are transitioning APM, PM, and SPM. I think the next question is, so let's say after they get hired, so somebody becomes a product manager. How does a role evolve, right, in their career? And if you can give some example, okay, APM would work on a problem like this. We can take any popular product and you can say APM would work on this and a PM would work on this. And maybe as you go up the career ladder, what are the kind of decisions they will take, or what are the kind of problem statements that somebody would work on, right? So this is something that many people are not sure, because in some companies they think like a PM would be more like a leader, but it doesn't happen, right? So you have to have more years of experience to manage a team or to have reportees, etc.
So I think let me go a bit more in reverse basically. When I say reverse, it would be like let's start with an SPM, right? A SPM would be owning. Let's take an example of Swiggy. Okay, let's take an example of Swiggy. Now Swiggy has Instamart, right? Uh, a director or let's say a PPM or a GPM would be taking care of the entire Instamart thing, right? The
Okay.
PM, the SPM would be taking care of the certain part of it. Let's say within the Instamart, a particular category he is taking care of it. A PM would be working under an SPM to take sub parts of it. Let's say search of only for that part, the recommendation of that part. A APM would be helping a PM or would be working in parallel to a PM to do the subparts of it. So basically, we've broken that down to into four parts from an GPM to SPM to PM to APM. That's how it works. So if you talk about from the top level, GPM would was actually taking care of the strategic decisions in terms of what should go in, what should not go in, how should this functionality work, or from the top level. The person, the second, and he is also kind of defining the roadmap as well at the same time, right? And with alignment to his senior team members. The last role, if you talk about, becomes more execution role, right? Now mid part is basically uh, when you talk about SPM, he's trying to implement those features along with the help of PM and APMs altogether, right? So if we break down into an evolution of a role from an APM to PM to SPM to GPM and so on, I think that the ladder that we spoke about previously as well is basically from an executioner to a strategic thinker, right? This is how it evolves altogether. Now, APM doesn't do the road mapping altogether, but that's the expectation, that's the rough expectation sometimes the organization will put in JDs and all. But the generally, if the strategic thinking and all that comes in is starts from a SPM role, and from there it evolves altogether. The first more important, the first few years of the PM role requires more of executions, more of closeness and built up with closure to the customers to understand what are the problems, navigate those challenges, and draft those problem statements. They both the roles at APM and PM level would be requiring going deeper into the problem, analytical thinkings altogether, right? That's how it would be requiring.
Got it. Perfect. I think the main thing is they go from an execution to a strategist. That's how the career would evolve.
Correct.
Got. And the next thing is like you would have seen that PM pyramid of circles, right? So there's the tech, there's business, there's design. So the most common confusion comes when reading JDs. They ask specific industry experience. So let's say if you apply for a core fintech product, they might say you should have XYZ years of experience in this specific industry or working in this kind of product. So the question that comes is, should a PM specialize in one industry or should they switch between different industries to gain experience? Somebody who's just starting, they are in, let's say, 2-3 years into their career, right? And they're planning for their next switch or going to the next store, right? Should they be in the same industry or should they like, okay, let me try a different industry, right? Should they do that? What should they do?
I'll try to answer from first from my perspective and then maybe take the second route in terms of why they should not, why they should. So if you talk about my role, I've been into multiple industry. I started from a LMS based organization and also worked into a e-commerce space. I've also worked into fintech and then now I'm currently into B2B space core and B2B. I've been majorly part into HR tech and previous to that I was more on the other side of the B2B space where I was implementing the getting the products implemented for Dr. Reddy's laboratories, right? Now, why it helped me? Because I have had the perspective of both the sides of role. So if you want to be a kind of a journalist, right? When you say as a role as a journalist, you would want to get the aspect into different industry. Now, two pros for this is One, it opens up avenues in long run for multiple companies altogether, right? You have been into different parts. You have been into B2C, B2B. You've also been into the e-commerce. You've been into the fintech and HR tech, right? So it opens up avenue. So you get horizon and different perspective onto the product management altogether. So that's where it helps. I've been into that kind of role. But yeah, today I was going through a couple of JDs recently to help one of my friend, and he was like, they've been asking insurance tech kind of
Insurance.
experience. They've been asking fintech is quite evident that I've seen more often, and insurance tech, and then there was like the grocery tech would come in tomorrow, let's say. So these are the kind of role that
Quick
would
one.
come in. Quick commerce, right? Quick commerce and hyperlocal and all those experience. The major part with that is you would want to understand different nitty-gritties of the market, right? If you've been into one industry, you would not be able to understand the other aspect of the industry, right? Today, veterans or people who would have been into this industry for last 20 years into product management would be able to answer this better, much more detailed. But the point is, they have been into different roles, and people would be into the same roles. If you talk about fintech, the reason fintech is requiring more of experience into fintech because fintech goes through many of the regulations and all, right? Understanding that industry, being into that industry requires a core competency, and hence that role requires a bit more experience into fintech. Same goes for insurance tech as well. But if you talk about a person who would want to get into e-commerce and have been into e-commerce is required, but not always, I would say, because if he has see the major point that you discussed, right, for an APM, PM and all, if you are able to solve and navigate through a role, it just would take 3 to 6 months for you to start your journey into the new domain and you will start delivering, right? But the another point, the reason companies look for a specific kind of experience is also the learning curve reduces. So let's say a person going from PayU to Just Pay or from Just Pay to let's say Razor Pay, the learning curve would be comparatively lower, right? So if a person going from Swiggy to Zomato, or if a person going from Flipkart to Amazon or vice versa, right? The learning curve would be lesser, right? And that's where companies generally ask, and that's the reason it has now become people would want to be hiring people only from B2B spaces when they're hiring in B2B. But there are companies who are open on both the sides, and they look for your skills more often than actually what you have done in your past careers or what the kind of company that you worked upon. But if I talk about one of the areas, generally the company that hire in UAE and all, since the tech is evolving there, it is a bit behind what India has done. They would always
Yeah.
look for people from the experience into that domain. So what they do is, if you worked in, let's say, Zoomcar or if you worked in Flipkart and the similar companies that they're hiring, they would look for your past experience more rather than they would look for your skills more often. So that's how it evolves because they want to reduce that learning curve, they want that experience to come in for them to have those PMs into their team. So that's how it goes in the industry. It's not a hard and fast answer to this. If you were to ask me that whether it should be or whether it should not be, but it has pros and cons on both the side. If you've been always been a fintech person, do you think you will be able to get into a B2B role? Is that the question comes in? So it's both the side pros and cons for both kind of experiences that a person should have.
Got it. Perfect. I think there was one more interesting thing. I was talking to a founder, and he was telling they want to hire people from a different industry because if they hire from same industry, they are constrained towards the innovation that they can bring in because they knew a lot of rules about the industry, right? So yeah, that was also an interesting aspect. I think there are many companies who are doing that maybe.
See, the major
Uh,
problem that comes in here is, right, you just given good example here, right? If you're bringing a person from the same set of industry or same set of background, the innovation blocks there because he has been roaming around the same circle without interacting or knowing what exactly could be the problem. So it's not always the same industry that you compete with, but you would be competing with certain other industry or certain other company which are not into your domain, right? The perspective that comes from a person who is not into e-commerce but he is into B2B and then he wants to get into e-commerce, the perspective will be new, right? Because he would be thinking in a different direction and different perspective. So you're right that that it helps to bring in the innovation thought process or innovative thought process to the company.
Got it. Perfect. I think the next question that the you'd have built a lot of products or features, right? And some might fail and some might succeed, or all might fail, all might succeed. So it depends a lot. So what are your key learnings from products or features that have failed and key learnings from what are the common patterns you have observed? Okay, this feature failed because of XYZ reason. And there might be a lot of reasons, right? So always it's not our fault. There can be market trends. Suddenly things change. So let's say during COVID, quick commerce evolved. Nobody thought before COVID that somebody would order groceries from home. It's mostly like a people would love to go to a supermarket, touch things, buy it out, right? Even like most Indian middle class wants to go and bargain and buy. That's where the real value they get in of buying things. But things change now, right? So what are your key learnings or patterns you have seen in the products that you have built that became successful and have failed?
I'll start with the failure. I think there are two examples that I would take. One is when I started my journey into product management, there was a feature that we released was buy leads. So common flow at that point of time was working with buy leads model, where the brokers or the agents could buy the leads, and there was a ranking that was given. So we replicated the same feature. So it was a competitive market, right? So innovations is different thing, but generally the competitive landscape would be copying the feature from one place and then making it a bit more fancier, right? So we created buy leads. When we created buy leads, we thought the basically this would fly in the market. But it did not, because as soon as because one is the pricing did not work out with every of the agents, right? That was one of the problem. Secondly, the usage did not pick up because the concept did was not able to understood by the agent community. Even we was not aware that it has also failed product from the common floor side, right? Common floor also did not succeed into that model because the agent at that point of time were not more techy. First thing is that they were not techy in terms of they were not e-commerce was not evolving. I'm talking about 2013, 14, right? So they were not techy. So it was early in the market. They were looking more of from the perspective of getting leads into their SMS more because that was the time when SMS was being seen as one of the major areas to get communicated, right? So they were looking. So you and we were expecting them to come to the platform, click on the buy lead, and then start getting those leads into that their bucket, right? So it did not work out altogether. Secondly, when I was working with door keys, there was another product that we were trying to bring. We were trying to replicate something like Cars 24 model into real estate sector for rental. So what we thought of buy at your own price or rent at your own price. Though the one of the key factor that we need to understand in the high value purchase or high value decisions is that the person has to feel it, right? Today, that's my perspective today, but I think there would be contradictory views as well. You cannot expect a person to buy a Mercedes on a platform without even checking it out or going and sitting inside and driving it. At the same time, you cannot expect a person to buy or put up a token for a house without even seeing it until unless he sees a value, right? Same goes for rental as well. If you expect a person to, if you ask me today, if I were to get a rental house in, let's say, in a city I'm transferring to, I would want to see it first because the way a broker would show it to me or a owner would show it to me, it's his own baby, and you know your baby is the best in the world, right? So you would not want that to be looked into the wrong way, right? But I would look at my way. How is that house for me? Will it suffice for me? How big is it? It is. So you cannot have that negotiation online. That was the failure. So anticipating and then building is a problem. Plus understanding and replicating something that might not be is a problem. So you need to understand and go a bit more deeper whether this problem is really there. So one is you have to be very close to the market. You have to be very close to the customers. Plus, when you're doing a GTM, you have to make sure you work very close to the customer to release that product, right? Keep training. In B2B, it is very important to keep training about your new product or releases that you do because if the customer is not adapting to the new features or new modules or new products, you tend to fail in that market. So I think these were the two major examples that I failed. If you talk about success, I can take one example from my previous organization, Leena AI. There was one of the challenges that we were seeing, and AI was evolving. So ChatGPT just got released 2 years back, right? So the problem that we saw is when the engagement surveys were being done. So the engagement surveys are nothing but with the organization run their NPS surveys or
Yeah.
basically regular understanding of pulse checks and all. The outcomes were the unstructured data was a problem, right? Unstructured data, I mean the comments that they were receiving. So here I'm not talking about verbatim analysis, but I'm talking they also wanted the action plans. Now the action plans can either be driven by reading all the comments, understanding, and then drafting everything, right? The good part that came into place was AI could do that job very fast, right? Which is where most of the companies that who have built the word cloud formations and all just got mainstream because of AI coming, ChatGPT or OpenAI coming into place, right? So what we built up, the action plans were auto-generated basis the feedback that analysis that we were doing. So that helped the organization understanding that what are the possible reasons in this particular survey, what are the action plans that an HR person or HR manager should take as an outcome of this survey. That was something that I see as a success because you're contributing to the right set of problem to the larger set of audience where you know the typical problem because they cannot read each and every comment. They want a summary. That's where, and plus it is outcome based because you're giving the action plan for them basis that summary.
I think from the first example of failure, I think one thing I understood is technology adoption and also like GTM are the core levers, because imagine at that time, as you told, e-commerce was not evolving. Maybe not everyone had smartphones, but today I think everyone have a smartphone, right? So it's easy for you to build an app, get it adopted in any part of tier 2, 3 cities also. I think on this side, the core, I think I understand that there's some big orgs who are like thousands of employees. So reading 1,000 comments for a
Yeah.
HR or a TA would be like a very very hard to solve for. I think the last question I have is, which is the most important that everyone is talking for every role. AI has been evolving, so there are new things like there's ChatGPT, there's Gemini, there's a lot of AI tools also are coming. So how do you think will it impact the product management as a function, and will it have any impact on the number of PM jobs? Will it be like an enabler or will it replace PMs, right? So what is your thought on this?
I think I'll just take the line that has been floating around on the LinkedIn and everywhere is that AI is not going to replace you, but product managers who use AI are going to replace the product manager or people who are not going to evolve, right? And this is not going to be just in the product management department, but this is going to be across the domain, across the roles or across the domains within the company, right? So that's what I look at it. Now, AI is not going to replace you directly, but AI is going to replace your day-to-day tasks that you do and try to help you as much as possible to be more clear in understanding, be more impactful in that sense, right? So it would also help you reduce day-to-day mental stress because you are able to do so. I'll give you an example. I'm not sure how much people have been using, but we have been seeing people have started writing their PRDs using chat
Chat.
GPT. That's one of the major use. And I don't deny the fact. I encourage my team as well to go ahead and ask ChatGPT to write the PRDs. Now you have to understand don't have to rely on ChatGPT to give you the exact PRD that gives you as the base, but you have to make sure you understand, you make the updates, you make the changes accordingly, and then come out with an impactful PRDs and details from there. Right now, if a person who is putting a prompt, help me with a PRD of XYZ feature, and ChatGPT would give it on your own, then and you're putting that and placing it to the technical person, it's not going to help. But you have to make sure your prompt and details are good enough for ChatGPT to understand the entire context. A recommendation engine being built for Amazon versus a quick commerce would always be differing, right? It is not going to be same. So if you're going to write, I need a recommendation engine for an e-commerce website, the chat GPT will give you a very generic answer, right? So I think that's where things and scenarios are changing for PMs. It is actually more helpful for everyone at every different role. And for researchers, for going a bit more deeper, I use it for my brainstorming sessions as well, right? If there is any problem that come across to me, I help it to draft. I have to do a bit of brainstorming sessions, understand going a bit more depth, do a bit more research altogether on that. It helps in that direction. So I would not really say it is going to replace altogether, but I would say it is going to be a bit more enabler and it would be the part of the role and it will evolve along with the role. So this is how I look uses of AI. And if you're not using today, and if you're not planning to use it in another 1 or 2 years, surely people who are using are going to replace you. That's going to happen for sure.
Yeah, perfect. I think it will more enable and people who are using it will replace you. Thanks a lot, Ashutosh. You answered all the questions based on your experience and taking real life examples that you had worked on and problems you had solved. Thanks a lot, everyone.
Thank you. Thanks everyone. Thanks, Manoj.